Okay, this is a salmon fish head, and today I'm just going to show you some basic anatomy of the salmon fish head. So at the front, down here, this is the buccal cavity, and as you can see as I press down here, the fish itself can enlarge that cavity, and when it enlarges the cavity, the volume of the buccal cavity increases, and so the pressure decreases. If the pressure outside here, which is shown by my glove, is higher than the pressure of water inside, which it will be if you increase the size of this buccal cavity, then the water will move into the mouth down a pressure gradient. Then the fish will close its mouth and the buccal cavity size will decrease. That will cause the pressure in the buccal cavity to increase. It can then open the flaps at the back, which are called the operculum. So this is an operculum here. And by doing so, that increases the volume across the gills, and that allows the water that was then in the buccal cavity, which is at the front of the fish head just there, to move down its pressure gradient and out at the back through this gap here, out into the water again. So allowing water to flow in a single direction across the gills. So now for the structure of the actual gills. If you open up the back flap of the operculum, you can see down here you've got this arch shape, which is called a gill arch, that carries the blood supply to the lamellae or filaments, depending on which textbook you're looking in. And then upon each of these lamellae or filaments, you will also be able to identify using a microscope the secondary lamellae, also known as gill plates. So if I just open up again, you can see another gill arch. So you're looking at an arch shape with these feathery structures, the lamellae, pointing outwards. You can also just about make out these gill rakes, which are on the arch, and those are quite pointy and sharp, so just be careful that you don't scratch yourself on those, okay, when you're doing your dissection. So the first thing to do when you're doing your dissection is to take out a section of this gill arch along with the lamellae or filaments, and I've done that using a pair of scissors. You can just snip across here, and that will isolate just a few lamellae. Notice how they stick together when they're not in water, but if I bring across to one that I've already dissected out, you can see that they have actually spread out much more effectively in the water, and that's important because obviously that's where the fish lives. It lives in water. The water will pass between these lamellae quite easily, allowing a good supply of oxygen to reach each of the gill plates that will be present on each of these lamellae, increasing the surface area over which diffusion can occur. And when the water passes across, basically what will happen is the water will be flowing in this direction and the blood will flow in this direction, and therefore set up a countercurrent mechanism, and that will ensure that the concentration of oxygen in the water is always higher than the concentration of oxygen in the blood, and so oxygen will always diffuse from the water into the blood, and then as the blood then moves back into the gill arch and then supplying the rest of the fish. Okay, and that's anatomy of a fish head.